Offensive line time. Everybody's favorite position, the hog mollies up front. Andrew, we're going to rank our top 5 at both offensive tackle and on the interior with these offensive line guys. So part 1 of this video is basically going to be our top 5 offensive tackles. Each of us have our own list. Then at the end, we're going to hit up on some honorable mentions, some sleepers, guys that didn't crack our top 5s, but we really want to talk about them. And then we're getting into the interior offensive linemen for part 2, our top 5 rankings there from both the guards and the centers. Finish it up with some sleepers there as well. But starting at offensive tackle, Andrew, again, we always do this, a broad overview of the position before we dive into the rankings. I think this position group's a bit hated on this year. I like it. I do. I think the top 6, 7, 8 guys in this class are pretty damn good. I don't think it's an elite crop, but there's going to be at least 5 guys that probably end up going in the first round. Really just a lot of solid prospects across the board here. And even outside that top 6, top 7, top 8, don't think there's much depth, but there's a few guys that intrigue me that I'm excited to talk about in the sleeper department here. But Andrew, before you get to your number 5, are there any quick thoughts you want to hit up on?
Yeah, I agree. This is one of the more interesting groups in the class because like you said, there's I think there's a top 4 that a lot of people are really excited about that are going to be, I think, can be really high level offensive tackles. There's been 2 or 3 guys that have a lot of potential to be up there. And then like there's some intriguing developmental guys we'll talk about later. So it's a pretty balanced class. Is it 2020, the year where they had like 4 Andrew Thomas, all those guys. It's not that class, but there's still a lot of talent here.
No, absolutely. Again, I said I think there's going to be, to be safe, I'd say at least 4 offensive tackles go round 1. Realistically, probably 5, maybe 6, but 5, I'd say, is the sweet spot there. That's a lot. That's a good dose. And that's with 31 draft spots. So let's dive into it. Offensive tackle number 5, Andrew, who you got?
And this might be unpopular. I don't know. For me, this was a pretty easy decision. It's DeJuan Jones. He's 6'8", 360 pounds, but does not move like it at all. He's really agile. And for me, that's all I need. I think they're overreacting to the lack of testing. Medicals weren't too much of a concern at Ohio State. He didn't miss a lot of time. I get when you have a guy that big, you're worried about durability, but he's so athletic and he moves his feet so well that I think he's going to translate well. And like, I don't know if he's as much as a project that people make him out to be. He's not Daniel Faalele from the year before where he's just massive.
No. He's not. I keep going on DeJuan Jones, but I just wanted to back you up on that. He is not Daniel Faalele. And I had fun with Faalele because he's a mountain of a man. He was a really fun, I wasn't big on Faalele. I'm big on DeJuan Jones. He's higher up in my rankings, but continue, Andrew. I completely agree.
Yeah, so my comp for him is like a dancing bear. He's just really big guy, but he does not move like it. And then I was in Columbus for a game either last year or 2 years ago. I can't remember which one. Saw him in person. He's every bit as big as you imagine and more. So my brother always, every time we watch an Ohio State game, he always brings up the factoid that he has the biggest Nike jersey ever made. And he does. So the upside is right there as a run defender where he's just going to destroy everyone because of his size. It's already baked in. And then as a pass protector, I feel his technique's pretty refined. He didn't struggle as much with speed rushers as you would think for a guy that big. I don't know that that'll be the case in the NFL when the athleticism disparity closes a bit and you're going against like Montez Sweat type guys. But DeJuan Jones, he graded out really well. I think he can play in zone without much issue, which is not something you'd say about Orlando Brown. I don't know. I like the frame, and I think his weaknesses are a little overblown.
I am so excited to talk about DeJuan Jones. We're going to expand on him in a bit because I have him. That might be my most unpopular rankings where I have DeJuan Jones in this class. Number 5 for me is Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's got a pair of underrated tackles in this class between him and Wanya Morris, who might end up in the sleeper discussion for us. Harrison, not a ton of true pass sets, but it's tough to imagine he's not going to be a really good pass protector at the next level. The way he moves, it's really solid. The production was there in college where he was just pretty much a shutdown pass protector. Just between the movement skills, again, he didn't have a lot of true pass sets at Oklahoma, but because of his length and I think his technique is still a bit inconsistent, but it's good and it's something you can build off of. And with all those movement skills, he's going to be a really rock solid blindside protector. That's really how I view it. I don't know if he's going to be great in the run game because he's not the strongest of the bunch, but no, I like Anton Harrison. I do. I've seen him steadily, quietly rise up boards. I might be a bit higher on him than consensus. I don't know. I think Harrison's going to be a really fine, solid offensive tackle, particularly for teams. Again, I think he's going to really translate to these true pass sets. I can't help but believe it, just because again he moves so damn well.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. He didn't make my top 5, but the pass side, I think he's got a lot of upside as a pass protector, and also kind of a high floor. I don't know that he's ever going to be a top 10, even top 20 tackle, but you don't need that from a early second round tackle. If he can be a solid starter, that's fine. Kind of like DJ Humphries, that is like that caliber of player. That's fine for a tackle. I just don't know that his upside is as high as the other guys in this class, and then the run blocking, I'm a little worried that he might get pushed around. I don't know that he's going to add much more weight, much more strength. But yeah, he's a fine player for a tackle prospect.
And I won't lie, Andrew, I have a bias with the left tackles. I don't even know if it's a bias, but I have a preference. I'm willing to overlook the run blocking stuff a little bit, and I'm really, really intrigued and put a lot of more weight and stock into the pass protection. I think that's where the NFL is leaning, just because on that blind side, that's the biggest thing. Now, the run blocking is still massive, and that kind of holds Harrison back a little bit for me. If anything, he would have been my number 6 rather than my number 4, right? So he kind of was like the 5 or the 6 out of this top 6. Definitely one of the lower guys, and that's one of the bigger reasons. But as a pass protector, he should be pretty rock solid in the league. But now let's move on to number 4, Andrew. Who you got here?
Yeah, my number 4. Now I'm starting to wonder if maybe this guy you don't. I was expecting him to be on your list. Maybe he's not. Darnell Wright. I don't consider myself that high on Darnell Wright. I kind of had to talk myself into him as a definite first round pick. I think the athletic testing really did it for me. An insane combine and RAS score, just did not see it coming because he's 335 pounds. Just a rock solid guy at Tennessee. That scheme, you kind of have some concerns about it just with every guy that comes from Tennessee. But he's got the size to be a really good run blocker. I like him as a gap, as a Bengals fan. Everybody's talking about Darnell Wright. I think he would fit right in with what they want to do. He was, had a lot of true pass sets just being with Tennessee, and he was successful. So I think he's got a lot of upside, and then I'm also not too concerned about him coming in and being a solid player.
Yeah, for me, Darnell Wright's at my number 6, and it's more so just somebody who's the odd man out, and it's unfortunate. I will say his RAS score stunned me because I don't see that athleticism on tape. I don't see that athleticism on tape. So I'm not forgetting that. Some people tend to see the RAS score, they see the testing, and they forget about what they've seen on tape. I don't see, what did he score? Like over a 9.5?
It's high 9s. It's like below like Blake Freeland, and that's about it.
Blake Freeland had one of the best, and I'm not a Blake Freeland guy, by the way, for those who are wondering. Not in on Blake Freeland, but he lit up the combine. Blake Freeland are one of the best combines we've ever seen from a tackle. Darnell Wright, I don't know what that was. It's nice. And NFL teams have taken notice. Fans have taken notice. Twitter analysts, whatever, have taken notice because Wright went from a consensus day 2 guy to, at this point, give it another week, Andrew, he's trending towards consensus first round pick now.
He's trending towards, I almost feel like he's trending towards consensus top 25, might go top 20. People are talking about it, which is getting wild to me. But
yeah,
it's a tackle. If you like a tackle, you take him wherever you feel comfortable. So
it's a premium position. And I think Wright wasn't all that great before this year, but he put it all together. He was awesome against Will Anderson. That's something people love to bring up all the time. You're going to hear that time and time again with Darnell Wright. I assure you, when he is drafted, the broadcast will show at least one rep of him versus Will Anderson and mention how good he was against them. But regardless, it's well-deserved. He's a very good prospect, but I am still a little skeptical about that athleticism. I'm not fully buying in on that RAS thing. It's nice. It helps for sure. But still buyer beware on that. My number 4 is Broderick Jones from Georgia. Height-wise, he looks a bit undersized, but he's got the length to kind of make up for it. I think his frame's fine. He's a really good athlete, though, and he plays with just an amazing, incredible mindset and kind of I'm just going to ram guys into the ground. I'm going to play through the whistle. Like, I really do like that kind of temperament that Jones plays with. Still some technical things that you need to work out with Broderick Jones. And keep in mind, he only started 1 year at Georgia, so maybe that explains some of it. But he is still kind of young. Again, the length is there. The flashes are most definitely there. I love his grip strength. And he's a really good athlete too. So Jones, bit more of an upside bet, but I think he's honestly a pretty safe upside bet. Like, coming from the SEC, I thought his film was pretty good for a first-year starter playing at that high of a level. He's still really young. So many traits to like. Jones, to me, is a pretty rock-solid first-round prospect. I feel comfortable giving him kind of that round 1 tag.
Yeah, I've got him as my number 3 guy. Just kind of the reasons that he's not higher, same what you talked about. Didn't play, he hasn't played as much. And then, has some, he's not totally polished yet, but like you said, I think he's going to develop. He's kind of like what I kind of hoped Anton Harrison would be what Broderick Jones is. Broderick Jones mirrors defenders really well. You want to talk about somebody that has good tape against Will Anderson, and everybody's going to bring it up every time a clip shows up. It's Broderick Jones in the national championship, all that. So that is intriguing to me. Really good pass protector, even though his techniques can be all over the place at times. And then a mauler in the run game, like you said, he's got that mentality. And then incredible athlete, former high recruit. I mean, he's a Georgia tackle, and for that reason, I think he's going to be a good player. He checks all the boxes.
Yeah. My number 3 here, and Jones, by the way. Well, it's funny because my number 3 is another Jones. It's DeJuan Jones.
I love it.
Yeah, Broderick Jones could be the number 3 too. The Joneses are pretty interchangeable here. You had DeJuan Jones at number 5, Andrew. I'm a bit higher on DeJuan Jones than consensus. In terms of being a behemoth, this is one of the biggest offensive tackles I've ever seen. He's 97th plus. I tweeted this out today. 97th plus percentile in height, in weight, in length, and in hand size. I mean, everything. The frame is massive. Every single, like, special length, special height, special weight, special hands, everything is insane. But when you think about these mammoth offensive tackles, you're thinking, yep, he's got the frame, but I'm sure he can't move. I'm sure technically he's raw. They think guys like Daniel Falele. Jones isn't exactly elite in those areas, but he's very good. I look at it like, where could he improve technically? I do think on those, deeper pass sets. You talked about it, Andrew. He's going to struggle with some speed rushers in the league. Absolutely. To me, when I look at his upper body and his lower body, sometimes the lower body lags behind a little bit. And these speed rushers actually get some leverage on the edge on Jones, but he just has the length to neutralize it. In terms of technique, look, the weapon that Jones has is the grip strength when he gets his hands on you. And he's getting his hands on you a lot because he knows how to use his length. Those are going to be the weapons for him. And I know in the NFL, a lot of people want to say, well, it's not as easy to just win with length. And yeah, I mean, Jones is going to have some issues, but he's going to be able to win with length a lot because it's special length we're talking about here. And it's special grip strength we're talking about. Jones is never going to be a great mover in space. His footwork always might be a bit slow versus those speed rushers. Sometimes I do think he leans a little bit too much and gets a little too top heavy. That was an issue we had with Evan Neal last year. And that definitely popped up on his film a lot in year 1. But Jones doesn't need to be spectacular in those areas. As long as he's fine, as long as those aren't areas that are detrimental to his game and causing a ton of issues that kind of make him unplayable, the rest is going to win out with him. And I think that's what you're looking at with Jones. His foot speed for a guy that size is honestly really good. In general, it's pretty mediocre, but Jones is going to be a really, really good right tackle in the league. I think Trent Brown's a good comparison for him, and that's going to scare people, Andrew, because Trent Brown was a bust of a signing for the Raiders. I'm a Patriots fan. I just went through the bad Trent Brown experience last year. He was awful, but if you remember when the San Francisco 49ers shipped him off to New England and he had those really good years, they were really, really good years. And did he benefit from Dante Scarnecchia, one of the best offensive line coaches in NFL history? Sure. But also keep in mind, Brown probably as a prospect wasn't even as technically sound as I think DeJuan Jones is. And a lot of the issue with Trent Brown is character things that have kind of led to him losing focus, getting too heavy and a little too overweight and kind of losing focus a little bit and voicing frustrations in the locker room. have those concerns with DeJuan Jones. And that's kind of been one of the biggest things that's held Trent Brown back and held him back from being the player that we saw in 2019 with the Patriots. So, yeah, DeJuan Jones excites me a lot. I think he's a first round guy. I'm higher on him than consensus. Give me DeJuan Jones at number 3 here.
Yeah, I like it. That's a little bolder than I was expecting, but I'm a big DeJuan Jones fan. I don't really have any issues with it. Like you said, his weaknesses are, he's a big guy. People are gonna nitpick them like crazy, but he can neutralize them just because he's so big. He can push guys off, and he's good. He's good enough at everything where I think that the size will help elevate him. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Number
then
2.
my number 2, when it comes down to the top 2, we've got the same guys, maybe in different orders. It came down to athleticism for me because I think they're both really, really good prospects. It's Peter Skoronski. I don't think he's as good as Rashawn Slater, which is the immediate comp for everybody. I don't think he's as powerful. Rashawn Slater is just, watch him against Chase Young. That dude is, we knew he was good. I think people overthought it. But Peter Skoronski, potentially 5 position versatility. That's going to be the thing that people have him as offensive lineman number 1 are going to cite. I think Paris Johnson also has 4 position versatility. So I don't know if he can play center, but Skoronski probably could. And yeah, Skoronski just super refined technique, really smart player. That's what you expect out of a guy from Northwestern. He's got good enough anchor. He just has those shorter arms, and I'm worried that might limit how great he can be in the NFL because he does have athletic limitations when he's facing off against these freakish edge rushers. I think he can get exposed a little bit, but you don't hold offensive tackles to the to a bar. You have to stop Myles Garrett. Nobody stops Myles Garrett. So that's, it's nitpicking with Peter Skoronski, but really, really solid player.
Yeah, I was a massive Rashawn Slater fan. I had him. That was a loaded class. That was such a fun draft class. No offense to this one. This is a good draft class. That Trevor Lawrence draft class, like the quarterback debates, all the who's the best defensive player and the receivers. That was such a fun draft class and stacked on talent. I still had Slater in my top 10. Absolutely loved him. I think the biggest separator between him and Skoronski, because yes, they're both really smart. They're both really technically sound. But ultimately it's like, can they play tackle because they lack the length? I was a big proponent of Slater can be an outlier. He's that good. Skoronski definitely deserves a shot, but the biggest separator between him and Slater is I think Slater's more athletic. And Skoronski isn't quite in that same field. Not that he's a terrible athlete, but he's not great. He's certainly not Rashawn Slater's level. But yeah, with Skoronski, you're going to give him a shot at left tackle. Let's see what he's got. Can the technique win out there? Can it translate to the league? And if it doesn't, I still think you're getting a really good football player. I still think you're getting a very, very good guard because now all of a sudden you're still getting this really smart, this really technically sound player, but you're getting it now without the size concerns because him at guard, he's got a good frame for a guard. So that's no longer an issue. So you're going to draft him probably anticipating and hoping for a good tackle. If you don't get it, though, he's probably going to be a really good guard in the league. So you got the versatility, you've got the fallback plan, and still, if he hits as an offensive tackle, it's a home run pick. So it's tough to go wrong with Skoronski, even within the top 15 where he's projected to go.
Yeah, and where do you have Skoronski? Is he number 2?
Yeah, my number 2 as well. Sorry, I should have clarified that. So we got the same number 1.
We do have the same number 1, Paris Johnson. Paris Johnson just checks every box and more. 6'6", 310 plus pounds, 36-inch arms, fast, athletic, can play in any scheme. Solid in pass protection and a mauler in the run game, and he improved. Played right guard last year, was solid. He was plug and play, one of the better guards in college, and then switched over to left tackle, had no issues at all. And I saw Paris Johnson play in high school, and obviously monster. I think he was the highest offensive tackle recruit in that class. And he's even developed. The amount he's developed from there is insane. He's just a guy that I think is going to continue to get better and better, and he has every trait that you could want.
Yeah, you summed up Paris Johnson for me. I think the Johnson versus Skoronski debate is Skoronski is a higher floor. Like he's more technically sound right now. You have the fallback plan. Like not that I think Johnson's going to be bad at left tackle because I think he's such an awesome prospect. But if it doesn't work out for him, feel more comfortable with Skoronski right now at guard, and I feel more comfortable with his floor. But the biggest separator to me getting that high is just the ceiling. I think Johnson has a better chance to hit at left tackle. And if he hits at left tackle, I think there's another ceiling for him to hit that doesn't exist with Skoronski, because Skoronski, at the end of the day, that lack of length is probably going to hold him back. That lack of length plus athleticism is going to hold him back from ever being one of the best tackles in the league. Paris Johnson has that type of upside. He does. And it's a very high range of outcomes. It's very tough to hit, but it's possible for Paris Johnson. It absolutely is. And that to me is kind of the biggest separator. Projecting these guys as left tackles, I would prefer Johnson over Skoronski. But now let's talk sleepers, because there's definitely a couple guys. Maybe you want to touch up on an honorable mention you had as well, Andrew. It's kind of just free reign. Whoever you want to talk about here that didn't crack your top 5.
Yeah, so the two guys I want to talk about, one of them's kind of an honorable mention. Wouldn't be my number 6, wouldn't be number 7. I don't think he'd be number 8, but Jalen Duncan from Maryland. Also an incredible athlete. He was getting a lot of first-round hype earlier in the year, which I was not on board with. Now we've course corrected, and he's like a third-round consensus player. I think that's a good spot for him. He's got starting tackle upside. There's just not a lot of offensive linemen that you can say that about in this class, in my opinion. I think he's got a lot better tape than Blake Freeland. Blake Freeland has a lot of issues. He's not as powerful as he should be, even though incredible combine, like we touched on. And Jalen Duncan is a similar athlete. So I think that people aren't talking about him enough when say, hey, if you miss out on one of these top tackles, grab a guy like Jalen Duncan. Maybe he works out, maybe he doesn't, but it's a dart I'm willing to throw. And then the other guy is McClendon Curtis from Chattanooga, I think is the school, one of those Tennessee schools. Chattanooga. Probably a guard in the NFL, but really good at the Senior Bowl, massive guy. PFF compares him to Jermaine Afidi, who played tackle at times. So I think McClendon Curtis could be a tackle in a pinch. Just a really powerful, big guy. And one of these players that I think has more upside than most of the day 3 tackles.
So I mentioned Wanya Morris earlier. I was higher on him, and then the more I watched him, I was like, I don't love him as much as I hoped I did, but there is a lot of upside for him. If he just gets it, and it's easy, it's a cliche thing to say, but he's one that, like, particularly out of these late day 2/day 3 guys, if he gets with a good offensive line coach, could blossom, because the wingspan's there, the flashes are there, there's athleticism there. He just needs to work out like the footwork and the technique and the consistency. So Wanya Morris is somebody, like, if you trust your development staff, you've got room to kind of stash him for a year, have him learn, and you trust your coaching. Like, Morris is a great bet to make. I think him and Anton Harris is a really good duo. Anton Harrison to really rep the Sooners this year in their tackle class. But another one for me is Kadeem Telfort at a UAB. Obviously, Dwayne McBride gets a ton of hype there, the running back. But Telfort at one point was like an SEC level tackle, and I think there's still some of that in there for him. He's a risk because there's some off the field concerns. He was involved in like credit card fraud that forced him to bump down to UAB, but the size is there. He's a mammoth. I mean, his wingspans, I think it was like a 37-inch arms. He's 6'8". He's just a massive frame, really good athlete. Again, off the field concerns for sure, that you're gonna have to work out some of those character concerns, and there are some technique things as well. I think he needs to clean up technically. There's still, losing some reps despite playing at a lower level. But in terms of the flashes, in terms of the athletic upside, in terms of the physical upside, it's all there for Telfort. He really hasn't got much buzz in this draft class either. So he's pretty much a surefire day 3 pick. Hopefully in the NFL, if he gets in the right environment, it's a cliche thing to say, but with all that upside, low risk, high reward type of pick on day 3.
Yeah, that's a nice shot. I'll have to check him out. I've watched a little bit of McBride, and the offensive line looks all right, but he didn't stand. So yeah, I'll have to go back and watch him a little bit.
Yeah, he's interesting because it's like, that's the time to take those guys. We talk about off the field concerns. Little plug for the interior defensive line, because me and Andrew just talked and ranked all those guys about like a half an hour ago, and those should be up now on our YouTube channel. We talked about Jalen Carter and like, where do you take him? But that's a whole different discussion. Like we're talking about a top 10, taking a guy in the top 10 with all those character concerns. Telfort's very low risk. But now let's shift gears here to the interior offensive line. This is where we're going to combine guards and centers and rank them both within the top 5. And then at the end, we'll get to some of our favorite sleepers that didn't crack our top 5. But I guess for this one, I'll kick this one off, Andrew. I've got Joe Tippmann, center. Back and forth on him. And we were talking in the back office before we kick this thing off. Not moved by this interior offensive line class. I don't love the centers, don't love the guards. Joe Tippmann, even at 5, I can't fall in love with him, but it's the athletic upside. He's just a really, really good athlete. It hurts because the film to me just wasn't that great, but he is 22 years old. And he's a really good athlete. And looking at this center group, the center crop, I mean, Luke Whippler, somebody who's got a bit of a capped ceiling because of his size. John Michael Schmitz to me is a very safe floor prospect, but doesn't quite have the elite ceiling. Tippmann might have the highest ceiling out of all these guys because of what he can do athletically. And he's still pretty young. I still like the flashes. I'm not really in love with Joe Tippmann. I'm pretty much at consensus with them, maybe even a bit below consensus, but I'm just not very high on this interior class. So he comes in at number 5 for me.
Yeah, Tippmann, I was debating back and forth between him and Weipler. I kind of came out with him at number 6, but I can go either way. Yeah, he reminds me a little bit of the Cam Jurgens. I was about to lose the name, from Nebraska last year, which was I kind of had a similar feeling about him, where he was more under the radar during the season. I was like, oh, this is a really nice center prospect. Yeah. And then all of a sudden he's a 2nd-round consensus guy. I'm like, well, he's still really good. I think he's worth the pick, but I'm not as excited about him there. Really good run blocker, Wisconsin lineman you feel good about. I think he's going to be a good player.
About that Jurgens comp too, real quick, Andrew, before you continue. I think this is a guy that too, maybe in year 1, similar to Jurgens, he plays some guard while he kind of waits in the wing to take over at center. That's just a thought, because I think he has the positional versatility to do both.
Yeah, which is another reason to put him above Luke Weipler like you did, because I don't know if Weipler can do that with size. Tippmann can. Yeah, and I did put Weipler at 5. I don't feel great about it. I'm an Ohio State fan, so I last year when he was a sophomore or redshirt freshman, watched him more as a fan, and he bothered me a lot. Which when I looked at the PFF grades, I was like, I don't know why you were upset with him. I just thought he lost poorly a couple times, and he wasn't a liability, but that was an incredible offensive line. And he didn't stand out to me. And then I went back and watched him as a prospect, and I was like, oh, he didn't stand out because he's just doing everything that he's supposed to on each play. He's got pretty polished technique. He's really athletic, and the combine and testing proof that he holds on to his blocks well, which is important for a center. Like he doesn't give up, even though he's a little bit smaller. And I thought he improved in 2022. But he's just not a wow player, not the strongest anchor, and he's pretty small, which is why I'm assuming that's why you left him off your top 5. And so, like, a lot of people have him as like a top 35 player in the class. They're mocking him to like the Texans right out of the first round. I don't know if I'd go there. I don't think he has the upside, especially at a position like center, where you can find a good center late in the draft. Right. There's a guy I'm excited to talk about that's going later.
Is he a Razorback?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way you think, Andrew.
But yeah, he's Ohio State offensive lineman, polished player. I think he'll be good. Josh Myers, who I was actually a bigger fan of, has been okay, decent center for the Packers. I think Weipler can do that, but don't take him above Creed Humphrey like they did.
No. Oh God. Yeah, Luke Whippler is off my top 5. I wanted to really like him because he's so smart. The way he works at the second level is really impressive, just in understanding angles, and he moves so well. He's such a great athlete, easy mover, technically sound as well. But at the end of the day, the lack of size and strength really concerns me. Like, his arms are really short. He's just over 300 pounds, really not much strength there. So I think his anchor is really, he's susceptible to bull rushes, and he really doesn't have any versatility to kick out outside of center. So he's basically just confined into, doesn't have this elite all-pro ceiling at a position that you said, Andrew, tons of depth at, very replaceable. And at the center position, if you're a team that runs a lot of the power stuff and you need a strong anchor, like Whippler just doesn't fit. So I wanted to like him, but there's too many, that's just too big of a concern for me really to put him in the top 5. But I hear you. He was close. He was like 6 or 7 for me. So but let's move on to number 4. Who do you have at number 4, Andrew?
I have Steve Avila from TCU. And he's a massive guy as well. Or unlike Weipler, very big player. I think like 340 pounds, which kind of surprises me. He doesn't look that big on tape to me. TCU obviously had a really fun offense this year. I like Kendre Miller. Their run game was pretty good. Steve Avila, what stands out to me for him is the versatility. He can play any position on the interior, and I think he can do it pretty well. In the NFL, he's really athletic. He's a really refined pass protector despite his massive size. You would think Mahler in the run game. That's not really who he is, at least not from what I saw. I think he can improve in the run game, but he's a guy with the athletic upside to be a really good run blocker. And then I think he has a high floor as well as a pass protector. So I wasn't like in love with Steve Avila, but just a really solid player that if you take on day 2, probably sometime in the round and set in the second round, I don't think you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, he was my number 4 actually as well. I'm going to tie this into my number 3 because it's a bit of like pick your flavor and based off scheme with my number 3. But Avila, he could probably play center or guard. He's really strong, great anchor. But he's one of these teams that, like, if you ask your guards to do a lot of pulling and moving, I don't think Avila's going to be your guy, your flavor. But if you're a team that really puts an emphasis on the power run blocking and the strong anchor, Avila is a great pick. He had a really successful again career at TCU. He has that interior versatility. He is really strong. The dude's he's got a massive frame. He's really big and he plays like it. So that's where I stand on Avila. I am a bit lower on him than consensus just because I don't love the movement skills. And I think that's where the NFL is kind of trending more towards. But my number 3 is Cody Mock.
That's mine too. I thought I was going to have like a unique pick here. I thought maybe you consider him a tackle, but we're in the same spot.
And I nearly did, but his arms are a little too short for me and he's not quite Peter Skoronski or Rashawn Slater good for me to no, I think I probably but he might be a swing. This is why I put him with Steve Avila, because he's kind of the complete opposite. It's pick your flavor based off maybe scheme or whatever you prefer, because Mock does not have nearly the anchor or the strength that Steve Avila does, but at the same time, nor can he probably play center. I don't think he's going to play any center. Wouldn't completely count it out, but I doubt it.
Maybe could. Some Quinn Miners to him a little bit.
Yeah, maybe, but probably going to be a guard / tackle in the league. You know, I maybe he's a depth option, and then for the first year or two, and then he settles into a starting role. Although I project him more again as a guard, but he's a guard for a team that just loves to move. Because this dude was a former tight end and quarterback actually in high school. His town was like 67 people big. Like, it was crazy. So he played tight end. He played quarterback. Really good athlete. He moves well. And get to the second level. He plays with some natural leverage, natural balance. I really like that. So again, he's the opposite of Steve Avila, where he can actually kick outside because he has those movement skills, but his anchor is a little questionable. He's not the strongest. He's also a 6th-year senior, so he's a bit older. But when it comes to the older prospects, I'm more accepting of them at a position like guard as opposed to a lot of these other positions in the NFL. So I like Cody Mock. I don't love him. Again, I think as a number 3 in the interior class, that kind of tells you that it's a bit of a weaker class, but he's got some versatility. I like his tape. Good character as well. He's a funny guy. So I got Mock at 3.
Yeah, maybe it's just the buck teeth and the long hair. That he just seems like he'd be a fun guy to have in your locker room. And he's one of these guys, especially at the Senior Bowl, where he's kind of a mean blocker, but he seems like he's having a lot of fun doing it. Like, he's not one of these guys that's taking out his anger. He's just, I love football. So that's kind of fun. And then, you said don't think he plays center. I think he could play center. I think if you asked him to do it, he'd do it. My concern would be is he converted from tight end into tackle. He's already 24. Do you want to keep making him learn new things? I don't know. Just put him as a guard and just let him maul people and move around and be a battering ram. Yeah, he's a fun guy. I think he's a plug and play. Going to be a pretty good guard. And maybe his upside, as one of these small school guys, maybe there's some untapped upside there with his athleticism.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree, because he's a really good athlete. I think he's just going to swing around. I think at the beginning of his career, it's going to be, we took him because we like the character, we like his versatility, and we think he's just going to pan out somewhere. Let's just find out. Like, that's going to be the plan with Cody Mock. If you come in just saying he's a guard or he's a tackle, you might end up disappointed. Like, try him out everywhere and see what fits. But number 2 here, I had John Michael Schmitz I don't know about you, Andrew, but for me, this center, because I've seen people there are spurts in this class where all of a sudden John Michael Schmitz goes from the consensus center one to, wait, I think Tippmann might be. And Tippmann, I talked about it earlier, he might have a higher ceiling, but Schmitz to me is the guy. He's the number one in this class. I don't think he's ever going to be one of the best centers in the league. I don't, because I don't see an elite athlete here. He is a bit older already as is. He'll be a 24-year-old rookie. But that's okay. With these interior guys, I don't care for the age as much. We see a lot of very good prospects that are just older and they end up having great careers, and it's fine. It's not a big deal. I just think he's just going to be a very rock solid center where he's pretty strong. The athleticism, again, it's just fine to me. It's serviceable. Doesn't give him a super high ceiling, but it doesn't really hinder him either. But again, he's strong, fine athlete, very smart player, good technician. There's very few weaknesses in John Michael Schmidt's game. You take him on day 2. I think if you're a team that needs a center desperately and you really just want to get that patched up, John Michael Schmidt's on day 2. He's going to step in. He's going to be a really rock solid starter for years to come.
Yeah, and I have him as my number 1 interior offensive lineman. I've got O'Cyrus Torrence at number 2, and I'll talk about Michael Schmitz a little bit here and maybe a little bit at the end after we talk about Torrence. But like you said, not an elite athlete, but that's okay. Just a really solid player. It was maybe the best player at the Senior Bowl period. I think he's one of these guys where at center, that's one of the leaders of your offense. Behind quarterback might be the most important leader. I think he's going to be able to lead an offensive line. Minnesota just always looked like they were on the same page, which is kind of, I like to credit that to the center. And he graded out really well, both in zone and gaps grades. So I think he's scheme versatile, even if he's not a perfect fit for either necessarily. I just think he's got a really high floor. And then for Torrence, people are high on Torrence because, played really, really well at Louisiana, then comes to Florida and does the same thing. He was the only bright spot on that offensive line for the most part. Really good run blocker. I don't know that he can play wide zone. I'm a little concerned about that. But, solid run defender, got better each year. Graded out really well. PFF comps him to Brandon Brooks. Maybe that happens. He's powerful, big guy. So, you love to see that.
Yeah, he's my number 1. And Torrence, I might be a bit lower on him than consensus, honestly, and he's my number 1. Again, I'm not big on this interior offensive line class. For a grade, late second, probably an early 3rd round grade for me, honestly.
Wow.
I don't think this interior class has a 1st round guy. I think in terms of 2nd round, you could make the argument for Torrence. You could make the argument for John Michael Schmitz in terms of a grade. But really, I feel comfortable calling those guys 3rd round grades. Maybe the same with Cody Mock as well. Granted, he might be a bit later. But with Torrence, he is the lack of movement skills, if you will, is what's kind of holding him back from being in the 2nd round, because you talked about it, Andrew. Will he be great in the wide zone? I don't know. And what I said about Steve Avila has to apply for O'Cyrus Torrence, and that's the NFL's kind of trending that way. They want these guys to move around more and pull and get into space. But in terms of just being a powerful guard at the point of attack, I think, again, as a run blocker, you have him attacking downhill, getting hands on guys, and just ripping dudes to shreds. I really like him. Plowing dudes over. And then in the passing game, just a strong anchor. If he's going up against some of these bigger defensive tackles, he's going to be able to handle them. But for me, it's just the movement skills that's going to hold him back a little bit in terms of upside. So yeah, I really am lower on this. I hate to make it sound bad because there's a lot of fun prospects. And I still really like a lot of these guys, but when it comes to high-end upside and Pro Bowl talents or whatnot, I don't think you're getting much of that in this class.
Yeah, the only one that I have a firm 2nd round grade on is John Michael Schmitz. There's a couple guys like Torrence that I've got a 2-3 on, and so I'm comfortable taking him there. But Schmitz, I think the floor is just that's what stands out to me. And then could he move to guard? Probably. Torrence can't play center, so
Nope.
If you want to make some nitpicks for who's 1 and 2, there's some versatility there. Yeah, but I'm fine. I'm both. I think are going to be good players in the NFL.
Yeah.
I don't know that they ever become elite players, but in a class like this, that's you're probably not getting that from anyone.
Yeah, and I think that's a theme too, because I want to give some credit to this interior offensive line class. I feel bad for constantly saying, "Oh, there's no top 64 guys in this class," or stuff like that. Granted, I think the John Michael Schmitz, even like you give him a day two, round 2 grade, I don't have a problem with that. He's going to be a really good starting center for a long time. But I do think there's a lot of just rock solid dudes in this class. It's like, yeah, they're going to be good players. They're going to be good players. I don't see the high end upside, but they're going to be rock solid players. And I think there's going to be some of those dudes available in like round 4. And that's like, okay, great. Like that's good value. But let's touch up on some of those guys who might be available in round 4, round 5, round 6, and get some of the sleepers in this class. Andrew, who's your favorite, or just anybody that didn't crack your top 5 that you really want to talk about?
We teased it a little bit earlier, but Ricky Stromberg.
Yeah.
I don't know why we just forgot about Ricky Stromberg. He was like a consensus day 2 pick last year and then decided to come back, and now he's a 5th rounder. I don't know that the evaluation should have changed on him. I thought he was pretty much just as solid, maybe not as impressive. I don't know. It's Arkansas. They have a good offensive line. Like he checks most of the boxes I look for from a center. Good, not great or elite athlete. I just think we faded him too much. If you take him late round 3, I don't really have a problem with it. I think he's going to be a decent starting center in the league.
Yeah. I that's why I teased it earlier. I was like, is that a Razorback you're talking about? Because he is not too far behind the Luke Whipplers and the Joe
For sure.
Pittman of the world. Like he really isn't. And if you came up here, Andrew, I kind of wish maybe I didn't, because I don't have him ranked as high, but I wish there was just a couple more reps I liked on film, or just it was a bit higher on Stromberg, and I could just say he's my center too, because he was pretty close. Like it wasn't. There's not some big gap or anything like that. For me, in terms of sleepers, I really do like Chandler Zavala out of North Carolina.
He's getting
State.
a lot of buzz right now. He might not be a sleeper for much longer.
He's not a buzz, not a sleeper much longer, but because he's constantly getting mocked in day 3, I'm gonna give myself a pass. He might be the most mocked. Like I'd be interested to ask like PFF, for example, and be like, who gets mocked the most?
He's on every mock draft you see in like
every single mock draft. It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know how that came to be, but I actually do agree with it because he's constantly available in like the 5th round of those mocks that you do. I find myself doing the same thing. He is older. He's 24 years old. He tested out really well, though, like athletically tested out really, really well. In the film, it's just really, really solid. And all these scouts have kind of been raving about how he's just this dude's just going to be a really good starter in the league for years to come. Just because he's so smart. His film is just rock solid. I don't know if there's an all-pro ceiling there or anything like that. I think that would be a long shot, although it's not completely out of the question. I don't. Again, the athletic testing was really good. I think it was a bit higher than what I saw on tape, but like still, he was a good athlete. So Zavala is just really well-rounded. Scouts rave about him and his character and his understanding of the game. So it's tough not to love him. If he really does truly slide to day 3, that's going to be like everybody's favorite day 3 sleeper pick, because everybody is onto him at this point. So it feels kind of fraudulent to call him a sleeper, but considering he's still projected as a day 3 guy, I'm gonna do it and go ahead, because I do like Zavala a lot.
And then I've got one more guy who I don't know if I'd call him a sleeper, but Andrew Voorhees. I said like, we have to give him some flowers. Yeah. Might have been number 4 for me if it wasn't for the injury. I don't know. It's a pretty close group.
Number 3, like.
Yeah, you can really argue. You can talk yourself in any spot for him. Just was really consistent throughout his time at USC. He's versatile around the offensive line. Athletic questions, that's the big thing. But he's crazy strong. And then you feel for a guy that gets injured at the combine and then still goes out there and has the most bench press reps. So I kind of hope that the Bengals draft. I hope he goes somewhere where he can sit around and maybe get a shot in a year or 2, because I think he can be a good starter. I don't think he's got upside like the guys we talked about earlier, which is why I didn't really consider putting him on the list. But he's if he's going day 3, why not take a chance on him?
Right. That's an injury discount for you right there, Andrew. Voorhees wasn't the most exciting prospect. He was projected as a day 2 guy, and I liked him there. I actually found myself taking him in mocks for guard needy teams at the top of the 3rd round. Like I like Voorhees. You talked about it. Not a great athlete by any means. So was the elite upside there? Not really, but he's so steady. He's so consistent. It was obvious like this dude's just going to be a really good starter in the league for a while. Just one of those guys. And that's completely fine. That's totally fine. I think that's not a home run pick at the top of the 3rd round, but it's a good pick. If you're going to get a good football player, a good starter in the 3rd round, that's a win. That's a W. So Obviously, the concern with Voorhees now is he's already older, and now you throw in the ACL tear. He's not going to play his rookie year. How does that stunt his development? Now he's going to be even worse as an athlete. So those questions do creep in. But if you get that injury discount on Voorhees, where he's fallen to like the late fourth, fifth round, I don't know how far he's going to fall, but he'll probably be there on day 3. I'd be hard pressed to believe he goes any higher than late in the fourth. Like, that's not a bad injury discount. If he can get back to even 90 to 95% of what he was before the injury, you're probably going to be patting yourself on the back for that pick in like 3 years.
Yeah, he's kind of Hendon Hooker type draft stock, just not a quarterback, almost like the Hendon Hooker of offensive line. I don't know, but
yeah. And that intrigues me.
Nobody's trying to talk themselves into him at number 5. Like, gosh, who was that analyst? Tannenbaum. Yeah.
Oh, he was
Hendon Hooker at number 5.
For quarter. Okay, yeah. I will say though, the Hendon Hooker of quarterbacks at the guard position to me is a little more enticing, just because quarterback is, you need that elite guy or whatever. We're gonna talk quarterback soon. In the upcoming weeks, we're for sure. We're working our way. This is the first tease of the offensive positions. We got through all the defensive positions. So if you have missed those rankings, make sure you go check those out. They've all happened in the past couple weeks. Secondary guys, linebackers, edge, defensive line. And now, again, this was the first offensive episode. So we've got all the receivers, the running backs, the tight ends, the quarterbacks coming up, along with plenty of draft strategy talk as well. I'm so excited to get into all of that. But Andrew, I appreciate you for joining me today, talking all these offensive line guys. We hope everybody enjoyed. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below to stay up to date with all the content we've got coming out all throughout draft season leading up within this next month. I'm stoked. Andrew's stoked. We're all stoked for the NFL draft. But until then, see you guys next time.